Leonardo DiCaprio was quietly enjoying his coffee at a bustling cafe when chaos erupted. The young man, known for his reserved nature despite his famous last name, had chosen a corner table by the window. He was dressed simply, a white shirt and jeans, with his tall frame slightly hunched as he flipped through the pages of a book. For Leonardo DiCaprio, this was a rare moment of peace until it wasn't. A man in his late 30s suddenly stormed up to him. His expression was tight with anger, and his steps were quick and deliberate. "People like you think you own the world," the stranger yelled, his voice slicing through the hum of conversations. Patrons turned toward the commotion, their curiosity quickly replaced by shock as the man threw his cup of coffee straight at Leonardo DiCaprio. The steaming liquid splattered across Leonardo DiCaprio's chest, soaking his shirt and dripping onto the table. Gasps echoed through the cafe. The sudden outburst left everyone frozen in place. Waitstaff, patrons, even a child who had been laughing moments earlier fell silent. Leonardo DiCaprio instinctively flinched, his body stiffening as the coffee hit him. His face showed no anger, just a brief flicker of disbelief. He looked down at his drenched shirt, the dark stains spreading as the liquid seeped into the fabric. His hands trembled slightly as he wiped his palms on his jeans, not out of fear, but to regain composure. The man who had caused the scene stood a few feet away, glaring, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths, as though he were daring Leonardo DiCaprio to respond. A few onlookers reached for their phones, cameras discreetly recording the incident. Others exchanged glances, their eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and unease. "Leonardo DiCaprio, say something," the stranger barked, his tone rising with frustration. Yet Leonardo DiCaprio remained seated, his eyes scanning the room briefly before settling back on the mess in front of him. The cafe felt as if it were holding its collective breath, waiting for a reaction. Would Leonardo DiCaprio call for security, confront the man, or retaliate? Every possibility seemed to hang in the air like a heavy cloud. Instead, Leonardo DiCaprio reached for a stack of napkins. Calmly and methodically, he began blotting the coffee off his shirt. His movements were deliberate, almost mechanical, as if the situation hadn't just escalated in a way no one expected. The stranger shifted uncomfortably, his earlier bravado fading as Leonardo DiCaprio refused to engage. Whispers broke out among the patrons. "Why isn't he saying anything?" someone murmured. "Is he really just going to sit there?" Arista approached cautiously, offering more napkins and asking in a low voice if Leonardo DiCaprio needed help. He shook his head, a polite but firm smile on his face. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice carrying a calm that felt almost surreal in the charged atmosphere. The man who had thrown the coffee now seemed uncertain. His gaze darted between Leonardo DiCaprio and the rest of the room, as the weight of judgment from dozens of pairs of eyes started to sink in. Leonardo DiCaprio, however, didn't look up. He quietly cleaned the table, his composure unbroken despite the humiliation he had just endured. For the onlookers, the question remained, what would Leonardo DiCaprio do next? As the cafe slowly regained its rhythm, Leonardo DiCaprio stood up. His shirt was still damp, the stain impossible to ignore, but his posture was steady. He adjusted his chair quietly, as though trying not to disturb the uneasy silence. All eyes remained fixed on him. Leonardo DiCaprio walked calmly to the counter, passing the baristas who had stopped mid-task to watch the commotion. The man who had thrown the coffee shifted nervously, his anger now giving way to something closer to shame, but Leonardo DiCaprio didn't spare him another glance. At the register, Leonardo DiCaprio took out his wallet and asked softly, "What did you order?" The cashier, stunned by the question, hesitated before replying, just a medium black coffee. "I'll pay for it," Leonardo DiCaprio said simply, and the cafe fell silent again, the weight of his words sinking in. The cashier looked at him, unsure if she had heard correctly. "You want to pay for his coffee?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Leonardo DiCaprio nodded, pulling out a bill and placing it on the counter. "And please, give him a fresh one," he added, his tone calm and steady. The cashier's hand shook slightly as she rang up the order, the unexpected act catching her, and everyone else, completely off guard. A few customers whispered to one another, their voices a mix of confusion and admiration. "Is he really paying for that guy's drink?" someone muttered. As the cashier handed him the receipt, Leonardo DiCaprio reached for a pen from the counter and paused for a moment, his expression thoughtful. Then he began to write. His handwriting was steady, each word deliberate, as if he wanted to ensure the message was clear. When he was finished, Leonardo DiCaprio folded the receipt neatly and walked back toward the man who had thrown the coffee. The stranger stood frozen, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. "Leonardo DiCaprio," he said softly, his voice carrying no hint of anger or bitterness. "I hope your day gets better." The man hesitated, then slowly took the receipt from Leonardo DiCaprio's outstretched hand. His fingers trembled slightly as he unfolded it. The cafe seemed to hold its breath once more as he read the words. "We all carry our struggles. I hope today gets better for you. Let's treat each other with kindness." The man's face crumpled, his shoulders slumped as he stared at the message, and for a moment it seemed as if the weight of the entire room had fallen on him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Leonardo DiCaprio didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked toward the door, his composure unbroken. The cafe's bell jingled softly as he stepped outside, leaving behind the tension and the stunned silence. For several moments, no one moved. The man holding the receipt looked around, his face pale and his eyes glassy. A young woman at the next table leaned forward, craning her neck to catch a glimpse of what he was holding. She gasped softly as she read the note, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's incredible," she whispered. A ripple of murmurs spread through the cafe, the atmosphere shifting from shock to something softer, more reflective. The baristas resumed their work, their movements slower as if the moment had left an impression they couldn't quite shake. Meanwhile, outside, Leonardo DiCaprio disappeared into the crowd, his figure blending into the busy streets. For him, the matter was resolved, but for the onlookers, the simple act of kindness he'd shown left an indelible mark. Little did he know, someone had captured everything: the coffee, the confrontation, the note, and within hours the story would spread far beyond the walls of the cafe. By the time Leonardo DiCaprio's figure disappeared into the city streets, the cafe had already begun to buzz with energy. What had started as a moment of chaos was now transforming into something entirely unexpected. The man who had thrown the coffee remained in his seat, staring at the note in his trembling hands. His lips moved as he reread the words, "We all carry our struggles. I hope today gets better for you. Let's treat each other with kindness." A nearby customer, a young woman with a laptop, finally broke the silence. "What did he write?" she asked, her voice tentative but curious. The man looked up, his face pale and eyes rimmed with red. He said, his voice cracked as he stopped to clear his throat. "He said he hopes my day gets better, and he paid for my coffee." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the cafe. People exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of disbelief and admiration. A young man in the corner, who had been recording parts of the confrontation on his phone, reviewed the footage. The angle wasn't perfect, but it captured enough: Leonardo DiCaprio's calm demeanor, the folded receipt, the man's stunned reaction. "This is unbelievable," the young man whispered. Without much thought, he began typing a caption as he uploaded the video to social media. "Leonardo DiCaprio just paid for the coffee of someone who threw it at him, then left this message. This is what greatness looks like." Within minutes, the clip began to gain traction. Comments flooded in. "This is the kindness we need in the world right now. Wow, talk about being the bigger person. Respect. Not what I expected from someone with that last name. This just changed my perspective." Inside the cafe, the mood had shifted entirely. The baristas whispered among themselves, one of them wiping away a tear as she glanced at the man still holding the note. The young woman with the laptop leaned forward, her curiosity overcoming her hesitation. "Why? Why did you throw the coffee?" she asked gently. The man hesitated, his face flushing with a mix of shame and exhaustion. I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "It's been a rough day, a rough year, honestly. And then I saw him sitting there, so calm, so untouchable. He paused, struggling to find the words. "I guess I snapped." The woman nodded slowly. "But look at what he did," she said softly, pointing to the note in his hand. "He could have yelled. He could have made a scene. Instead, he did this." The man looked down at the note again, his eyes glassy for a moment. He was silent. Then, almost to himself, he murmured, "I don't deserve this." Another patron, an older man sitting nearby, chimed in, "Maybe not, but that's the point, isn't it? Kindness doesn't depend on whether we deserve it. It's about showing humanity, even when it's hard." As the conversation unfolded, the video of the incident continued to spread online. News outlets picked up the story within hours, sharing headlines like Leonardo DiCaprio's act of kindness goes viral after confrontation in Café, and Trump heir turns humiliation into a teachable moment, replaced by the new narrative. Comments and reactions poured in from across the political spectrum. Some praised Leonardo DiCaprio's restraint and humility, while others debated the significance of his actions. But one thing was clear: his message of empathy had struck a chord. Meanwhile, the man in the cafe sat quietly, the weight of his actions and Leonardo DiCaprio's response settling over him. He placed the note carefully in his wallet, as if it were something fragile and valuable. Then, standing up, he approached the counter and handed the barista a $20 bill. "Give this to the next person who orders," he said, his voice steady but low. "It's not much, but I want to pass it on." The barista smiled, nodding. "I think that's a great idea," she replied. As he walked out of the cafe, the man couldn't help but glance at the street where Leonardo DiCaprio had disappeared. For the first time in months, he felt something shift inside him. A glimmer of clarity, maybe even hope. The story, however, was far from over. The ripple effect of Leonardo DiCaprio's actions was only just beginning. By the next morning, his act of kindness had become the focal point of a nationwide conversation. The video recorded by the young man in the cafe had gone viral, racking up millions of views across multiple platforms. News outlets dissected the moment, highlighting the note and Leonardo DiCaprio's decision to pay for the coffee of someone who had publicly humiliated him. Social media erupted with reactions. The hashtags #KindnessInAction and #Leonardo DiCaprio began trending, and people from all walks of life shared their thoughts. This is how you respond to hate, with grace and compassion. We need more moments like this. Thank you, Leonardo DiCaprio, for reminding us to be better. I wasn't a fan of his family, but this just changed my mind about him completely. Among the wave of responses, one post stood out, a message from the man who had thrown the coffee. It appeared as a written statement accompanied by a photo of the note Leonardo DiCaprio had left. "I want to publicly apologize for my actions yesterday. I was angry, frustrated, and I took it out on someone who didn't deserve it. Leonardo DiCaprio's response to my behavior was something I'll never forget. His kindness and his words reminded me that we're all struggling in our own ways, and that lashing out isn't the answer. I vow to do better, and I hope this message encourages others to think before they act." The post quickly went viral on its own, with people praising the man's humility and Leonardo DiCaprio's ability to inspire a change of heart. It was a rare moment of collective agreement in an otherwise divided online world. Meanwhile, back at the cafe, the staff couldn't stop talking about what they had witnessed. The barista who had handed Leonardo DiCaprio the receipt was interviewed by a local news station, her voice trembling with emotion as she recounted the event. "He didn't have to do anything," she said, "but he chose to be kind. It wasn't just the words on that note. It was the way he carried himself, like he genuinely believed in what he was saying. It changed the atmosphere in that room. It changed me." Customers began stopping by the cafe, some out of curiosity, others to leave their own acts of kindness. A small donation jar appeared near the register, labeled with the words "Kindness Fund," inspired by Leonardo DiCaprio. By the end of the day, it was overflowing. As the story continued to gain traction, Leonardo DiCaprio himself remained silent. His absence from social media only added to the mystique surrounding his actions. Reporters camped outside his home, eager for a statement, but he didn't emerge. A single tweet eventually appeared on his account. "Kindness costs nothing, but can mean everything. Let's keep paying it forward." The ripple effect of Leonardo DiCaprio's actions went beyond the internet. Schools across the country began using the story as an example in discussions about empathy and conflict resolution. One teacher posted a photo of a classroom activity inspired by the event. Each student wrote a note of kindness to someone they felt had wronged them. "I've never seen such honest and heartfelt words from my students," the teacher wrote. "This story has touched all of us." Even charities got involved. Inspired by Leonardo DiCaprio's message, a nonprofit organization launched a campaign called the Kindness Initiative, aimed at funding community programs focused on conflict resolution and mental health support. Donations poured in from across the nation, and within weeks the campaign had surpassed its initial goal. The man who had thrown the coffee, now a key part of the narrative, also stepped forward to support the movement. He joined local events promoting empathy, openly sharing his experience as a way to encourage others to reflect on their actions. For many, this story wasn't just about Leonardo DiCaprio. It was about the power of a single moment to change lives. His actions had sparked something larger than himself, reminding people that in a world so often divided, empathy could still bridge the gap. Amid the whirlwind of attention, Leonardo DiCaprio remained steadfastly quiet. For him, the cafe incident wasn't about gaining recognition. It was about doing the right thing. While the world debated his actions, he stayed focused on his daily life, refusing interviews and ignoring the noise. One evening, however, he shared a brief message through his social media accounts. The post featured a photo of a sunset with the caption, "We all have the power to make someone's day brighter. Let's use it." The simplicity of the message resonated deeply, further cementing the impact of his earlier gesture. Meanwhile, the ripple effects of his kindness continued to unfold. The cafe, where the incident occurred, had become a symbol of hope, drawing visitors eager to leave notes of kindness in a growing collection at the counter. The man who had thrown the coffee, now an active advocate for the kindness initiative, often visited the cafe himself, quietly encouraging others to reflect and grow. For Leonardo DiCaprio, the most profound moments came in private. In a rare conversation with a close friend, he admitted, "I didn't expect any of this. I just wanted to show him that anger doesn't need to win. Sometimes people just need to feel seen." In the weeks that followed, stories of kindness inspired by Leonardo DiCaprio's actions flooded social media, from simple gestures like paying for a stranger's coffee to larger efforts like community events. The movement he sparked continued to grow in a divided world. Leonardo DiCaprio's quiet act of grace became a beacon, proving that kindness still mattered and had the power to unite us all.